Somewhere in China right now, a woman is sitting behind a hotel reception desk. She greets every guest who walks through the door. She remembers faces. She remembers names. She remembers that the man in room 214 asked about the nearest pharmacy yesterday afternoon, and she follows up when he passes through the lobby this morning to ask if he found what he needed. She has not taken a single day off in 6 months. She does not get tired. She does not get frustrated when the same question gets asked for the 40th time in a shift. She does not check her phone under the desk or lose focus at the end of a long evening. She is not a person, and the guests interacting with her have no idea. We are not talking about anything you have seen before when you hear the word robot. Not the industrial arms welding car frames in a factory. Not the screen on a wheeled base that rolls around a hospital corridor. Not the clunky, obviously mechanical humanoids that have been showing up at technology conferences for the past decade to politely demonstrate that they can wave and say hello. We are talking about machines with skin that feels warm to the touch, eyes that hold moisture the way living eyes do, faces capable of producing the micro expressions, the tiny rapid flickers of emotion that your brain reads constantly in the people around you without you ever consciously registering that it is doing it. We are talking about machines that breathe, chests that rise and fall in the quiet, slightly irregular rhythm of a person sitting at rest in the same room as you. China has built 5 of them. 5 female humanoid androids engineered so precisely to replicate human presence that people who encounter them in real life consistently reach for the same word to describe the experience. Unsettling, not because something looks wrong, because nothing does. Today, we are going through every single one of these robots, where they came from, what makes each of them different from anything else that has been built anywhere else in the world, how they are already operating in real environments right now in 2026, and what the full picture of this technology tells us about a future that is arriving considerably faster than most people realize. If videos like this are what you come here for, hit the like button before we go any further. The research that goes into putting these together is significant, and every like tells us directly that you want more. Subscribe and hit the notification bell. Some of the most important things we cover are the ones that do not trend on their own. You want to be there when they land. All right, let us get into it. The story of where all of this began does not start with a technology giant or a government program with an unlimited budget. It starts with a university research team in 2016 that decided to take a question seriously that most of the robotics world was treating as a distant theoretical problem. How close can you actually get? How close can engineering bring a machine to the experience of encountering another human being? Not in terms of intelligence, not in terms of processing power or conversational capability, in terms of presence. In terms of what your body feels when something is standing in front of you and your nervous system is deciding what category to put it in. The team at the University of Science and Technology of China built a robot they called Gia Gia. She had a face modeled on a young Chinese woman, proportioned carefully and textured in silicone that moved when she expressed emotion rather than holding the fixed quality of something manufactured. She could hold a genuine back and forth conversation, processing what she heard and producing responses that fit the context of the exchange. She could look directly at the person in front of her and shift her expression based on what they said, the tone they used, the emotional register of the interaction. What made Gia Gia famous was not any of that. It was a single moment from a single interview that spread to millions of people and refused to stop circulating. A journalist conducting the interview leaned in slightly closer than felt comfortable. Gia Gia looked at him, paused in the specific way a person pauses when registering mild irritation, and said without any particular drama, "Please do not come so close when you are speaking to me. I feel uncomfortable." The pause is what got people. The delivery is what got people. Not the words themselves, but the quality of the moment around them. The slight recalibration in her expression before she spoke. The calm directness of someone who had a preference and saw no reason not to express it. Millions of people watched that clip, and then watched it again and then sent it to someone else and asked them to watch it because they needed to know if what they were seeing registered the same way to someone else. It did, consistently. Every time, Gia Gia was never produced at commercial scale. She was a proof of concept, a demonstration that this direction of research was not a dead end or a vanity project, but a genuine frontier with genuine possibilities waiting at the other end of it. Resellers today list her at prices around $30,000, which tells you something about the appetite that followed her public debut, even though she was never intended for sale. Her real contribution was not what she could do, it was the question she forced the rest of the industry to sit with. If a university team working with constrained resources and a constrained timeline produced this in 2016, what does serious investment and serious scale produce in the years that follow? The answer to that question started coming out of a factory in Dalian. Most manufacturing facilities in China produce components, the pieces that go into the products the rest of the world buys and uses without thinking about where they came from. The facility, operated by a company called X Robots, produces something that belongs in a different category entirely. It produces androids. Female humanoid androids built to a standard of physical realism that the global robotics industry had not seen coming from any direction, let alone from a manufacturer operating at commercial production scale. X Robots was built around a single founding principle that most companies in this space would consider too specific, too narrow, and too difficult to commit to as an organizational mission. The goal was not the most capable robot, not the most affordable robot, not the robot with the most advanced artificial intelligence or the most impressive movement system or the most sophisticated conversational ability. The goal was the most physically realistic robot, the one that, when you stood in front of it, produced the least amount of cognitive resistance in the part of your brain that is constantly deciding whether something in your environment is a person or not a person. Everything else followed from that. The skin is silicone, but it is not what you picture when you hear that word in the context of a robot. It is engineered at a level of specificity that takes significant time to describe properly. There are freckles, not applied uniformly as a texture, but distributed the way freckles actually distribute across real human skin, clustering in some places and absent in others. There are small moles placed where small moles appear on real faces. There is a visible suggestion of veins beneath the surface of the wrist and the back of the hand, faint enough that you would only register it if you were paying close attention, which is exactly how it works on an actual human hand. The texture varies across the face, the way it varies on real skin, slightly different at the forehead than at the cheek, slightly different again around the eyes. The hair is placed one strand at a time, not in sections, not applied as a unit. Individual strands, individually implanted, the way hair actually emerges from a human scalp. This detail alone adds days to the production time of each unit. The eyes are the detail that produces the strongest and most consistent reaction in people who see these androids in person. They hold moisture, not the dry flatness of a doll's eye, not the slightly overdone shine of a well-made animatronic. The specific wet quality that makes a human eye catch and reflect light the way it does, that gives a living eye its particular sense of depth and presence. When you look directly at one of these androids, the eyes look back with a quality that your brain does not file under artificial. And then there is the breathing. The chest rises and falls. Not on a mechanical timer, not in the steady metronome rhythm you would get from a pump cycling at a fixed rate, but in the quiet and slightly irregular pattern of a person sitting at rest. The kind of breathing you notice in a room only when you start paying attention to it. The kind your own body does without you managing it. When you are standing next to one of these androids without specifically thinking about what it is, your nervous system receives no alert. It receives the ambient signal it sends when another person is nearby. Each unit takes between 2 and 4 weeks to produce. Everything is done by hand. Every android is custom built against a specific brief covering appearance, role, and physical specification. The price for a high-end custom unit from this company reaches $275,000. These robots are not in display cases or museum collections. They are in retail stores and medical facilities and government reception areas across China right now. being interacted with daily by people who have no particular reason to suspect that the person helping them is not a person at all. The vast majority of those people leave without suspecting it. While that company was building androids for institutional clients and high-budget buyers, a robotics company based in Beijing was working on a question that nobody else in this space had taken seriously enough to actually answer. What does this technology look like when it is accessible? Not accessible in the sense of being vaguely less expensive than the most exclusive options, accessible in the sense of being something a care facility with a normal budget could consider, something an individual person could realistically think about owning. The company launched a companion robot in late 2025 at a price of 9,998 yuan. At current exchange rates, that is approximately $1,380. That number landed in international technology coverage like a dropped object. Not because of the robot specifically, but because of what the price implied about where the floor of this technology now sat. But the robot that made the industry stop and genuinely recalibrate was unveiled in May 2026. It was a bust format android, built from the shoulders upward, and the design decision behind that format is worth understanding because it reflects something true about human psychology that most robotics companies had not yet centered in their engineering approach. The overwhelming majority of human connection happens from the shoulders up. It lives in the face, in the eyes, in the subtle movements of expression that accompany listening and responding and processing. The quality of feeling understood by another person, the sense of genuine presence in a conversation, does not come from watching someone's hands or registering how they shift their weight when they stand. It comes from the face, from the eyes specifically, from the thousand small movements a face makes in the course of 30 seconds of normal conversation that you register completely without being able to list them. Instead of building a full humanoid robot and accepting compromises everywhere in order to do it, this company put its entire engineering focus into making that core experience as real as possible. The result is a robot with a fully expressive, realistic face that tracks your expression and responds to your emotional tone, that engages with what you are actually saying, rather than pattern matching to scripted responses, that makes you feel during the interaction that something on the other side of the conversation is present with you. The more affordable models in their lineup sold out completely at their first public exhibition events. The buyers were not technology enthusiasts collecting hardware. They were care facilities, hospitality businesses, and individual people looking for a kind of presence that a screen could not provide. What this company understood before most others did is that the face is the product. Engineer the face correctly, and you change every assumption people bring to an interaction with a machine. Speaking of what a face can do, the next robot on this list went viral in late 2025 for a reason that no amount of marketing could have engineered. A video appeared online showing what appeared to be a young woman sitting at a reception desk expressing a range of emotions in response to a conversation. The comments section filled within hours, with people insisting it was a human actor, a deepfake, a staged piece of content created to generate exactly this kind of reaction. The company that built her had to release additional footage showing her internal structure just to convince a skeptical public that the face they were watching was not attached to a person. Her face contains more than 30 precision motors operating simultaneously in real time, not producing a library of preset expressions that get called up in response to trigger words. Producing the continuous, flowing, overlapping movement of a real human face during a real conversation. The slight tension that appears around the eyes before someone says something they are uncertain about. The way a smile does not arrive all at once but builds in stages, starting at the corners before it reaches the eyes. The micro-expression that crosses a face in under a second when someone hears something surprising, too fast to be a performance, too specific to be an accident. Her eyes track movement actively. When you are speaking to her, they orient toward you. When something happens at the edge of her visual field, she registers it the way a person registers peripheral movement, with a brief, natural reorientation rather than a mechanical pivot. Her facial movement is synchronized with her speech so that the relationship between what her face is doing and what she is saying has the same timing it has in a real person, not a slight lag, not a reset between sentences, but a continuous flow. She has been deployed as a receptionist across more than 200 real locations in China as of early 2026. Hotels, corporate offices, public buildings with thousands of daily visitors. When her units went to pre-order on one of China's largest retail platforms, the waitlist filled faster than available supply, and buyers had to place a deposit of around $450 just to hold a spot. At a unit price of between $25,000 and $30,000, businesses are prioritizing the purchase because the results of deploying her are measurable and consistent. The deeper you go into this technology, the more the individual achievements start to feel like steps in a single direction. Each robot on this list pushed one specific boundary further than it had been pushed before. What the final robot on this list did was attempt to push all of them at the same time. In February 2026, a company called DroidUp walked onto a stage at a technology event in Shanghai and introduced what they described as the world's first fully biomimetic humanoid android. Biomimetic means built to replicate biology, built to copy not just the appearance of life, but the physical signals that living things produce and that other living things are constantly reading. The skin is warm, not room temperature, not the ambient temperature of an object that has been sitting in a climate-controlled environment. Warm in the range of 89 to 96 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the temperature range of a living human body. When you shake her hand, the temperature information your skin receives does not say object, it says person. This is not a small detail. Temperature is one of the most fundamental pieces of information your body uses to categorize what it is in contact with, and it operates entirely below conscious awareness. You do not decide what temperature tells you, it tells you directly. Her chest rises and falls, not in the mechanical rhythm of a device cycling through a programmed sequence, but in the quiet, slightly variable pattern of genuine respiration. The variation is deliberate. Real breathing is not perfectly regular. It shifts slightly based on attention and posture and the specific demands of speaking. Her breathing incorporates those variations so that if you are in the same room as her and you are not specifically focused on the question of whether she is a robot, you do not notice her breathing as unusual. You notice it the way you notice the breathing of anyone sitting near you, which is to say you absorb it as background information, confirming the presence of another person. Her eyes follow your gaze with the specific quality of social attention rather than object tracking. When you look away, she registers the shift. When you look back, her attention returns to meet yours. Her pupils respond to light in the way human pupils respond to light, which is a physical mechanism built into the structure of her eye system rather than a simulated effect. And her face produces micro-expressions, the sub-second emotional flickers that human faces produce involuntarily during conversation, the signals your brain reads constantly in the people around you as the most honest layer of communication available. She produces them, which means the information your brain is receiving during a conversation with her is not missing the layer it uses to assess sincerity and emotional state. It is receiving that layer the same way it receives it from everyone else. She also moves with deliberate imperfection. This detail is more technically sophisticated than it sounds. Human movement is not smooth. It contains micro-adjustments, brief weight shifts, the tiny organic unpredictability of a body that is balancing and orienting itself in real time rather than executing a programmed path. Every previous attempt to replicate human movement in a robot has failed at this specific level, because the failure mode of machine movement is excessive smoothness, too consistent, too controlled, too much like something following a precise instruction rather than something alive navigating a physical environment. Her movement system incorporates the specific quality of human imperfection, the micro pauses, the subtle weight transfers, the organic variation that your visual system reads as aliveness without your being able to articulate exactly what it is reading. She launched in Shanghai at a price of 1.2 million yuan, approximately $173,000, which places her clearly in the category of institutional and high-end commercial deployment rather than individual consumer purchase. But the significance of what she represents has nothing to do with who can currently afford her. She is the most complete answer yet to the question that started this entire trajectory back in 2016 when a university team in China asked how close you could actually get. Based on the full picture of what she can do, the honest answer in 2026 is closer than most people are prepared for. The rest of the world has not been standing still, but the comparison is illuminating in ways that matter for understanding where this technology is going. Sophia, built by Hanson Robotics in Hong Kong, was for years the most recognized humanoid robot on the planet. She gave speeches at international forums. She was granted citizenship by Saudi Arabia in 2017, the first robot in history to receive that designation from any country. She accumulated a global following and appeared on the covers of major publications. For a significant period, she was the face of what advanced robotics looked like in the public imagination. She is remarkable for what she is. But her face is built around a visible mechanical structure, and her expressions, while genuinely impressive for when they were developed, retain the quality of something you understand to be manufactured. Your brain does not confuse her for a person. A mecha, built by Engineered Arts in the United Kingdom, has some of the most fluid facial movement currently produced by any Western robotics company. Her expressions have a genuine quality of animation, and she has reached enormous audiences online through footage that consistently surprises people who are not expecting the level of expressiveness she demonstrates. She is clearly a robot in appearance, gray and visibly mechanical, designed to be compelling as a robot rather than to disappear into the category of person. What the comparison reveals is not that Western developers are less capable. It is that they have made a fundamentally different design choice. The Western approach has largely centered on building machines that are clearly artificial but impressively functional. Transparent about what they are, focused on what they can do within the honest presentation of being a machine. The Chinese companies we have looked at today have pursued the opposite direction entirely. The goal is not capability within acknowledged artificiality. The goal is the elimination of acknowledged artificiality as a category. The goal is a robot that your brain does not register as a robot during the interaction. Neither approach is wrong. They are answers to different versions of the question. But in terms of physical realism, in terms of the gap between what your senses tell you and what is actually in front of you, the distance between what companies like DroidUp and X-Robots are producing and what the rest of the world is currently offering is significant enough that it has everyone paying attention. Here is the thing that is easy to miss when you are watching footage of these robots online and processing the reaction of encountering something that looks this real. The shock of the footage is not the point. The shock wears off. What comes after the shock is the question, and the question is the part that matters. Every single one of the 5 robots we have looked at today is already deployed in the real world, not in development, not in a controlled research environment, in actual buildings, doing actual jobs, interacting with actual people who in the majority of cases are not informed that they are talking to a machine. That shift from laboratory to daily life happened quietly, and it happened faster than almost anyone in the industry was publicly predicting 2 years ago. The healthcare implications alone are worth sitting with seriously. Facilities caring for elderly patients are deploying humanoid androids as social companions. Research in this area has already documented something that challenges comfortable assumptions about what connection requires. Patients in certain care environments form genuine emotional bonds with robotic companions. They report feeling heard. They report feeling less alone. In some documented cases, they find the robot's presence, its consistent, calm attention, and its patient availability easier to be around than the attention of overworked human staff who have 30 other patients requiring care simultaneously. This is not a criticism of those staff members. It is a reflection of what happens when presence is made available without the constraints that human presence operates under. In hospitality and customer service, the implications are different but equally significant. The slight adjustment people make when they know they are dealing with a machine, the reduced expectation, the different register of interaction, the absence of the social warmth that makes a service experience feel genuinely good rather than merely functional, all of that adjusts when the machine in front of you is producing the signals. Your nervous system reads as human presence. The interaction changes, the experience changes, the memory of the experience changes. And then there is the question that sits underneath all of this and does not resolve neatly regardless of how long you spend with it. When a machine can meet your eyes and hold them, when it can read the emotional tone of what you are saying and reflect something appropriate back, when it can make you feel in the moment of the interaction genuinely heard and genuinely met, what does that do to our understanding of what connection actually is? Is the feeling of being understood by something that does not understand in the way a person understands the same as being understood? Does the origin of the feeling change what the feeling is? If the experience is real, is the source of the experience required to be real in the same way? These are not questions that have settled answers in 2026. They are questions that the technology has forced into the present tense before the broader culture has had adequate time to think carefully about them. We are being asked to form positions on things we have not fully processed yet, because the things we have not fully processed are already sitting behind reception desks and greeting us in hotel lobbies and asking us how our stay is going. What we can say with confidence is that the robots we looked at today are not the final version of this technology. The engineering teams behind them are already building what comes next. More precision in the skin, more motors in the face, more sophistication in the movement system, more of the seamlessness that makes the question stop feeling like a question and start feeling like just another Tuesday morning in the lobby. We are at the opening of something. These 5 robots are chapter 1 of a story that is going to run much longer than most people are currently accounting for and touch parts of daily life that most people are not yet thinking about in this context. The question is not whether you will encounter this technology. You may already have without knowing it. The question is what you think about it now that you know what it is. If this video gave you something to think about, hit the like button. It matters more than you know for helping content like this reach more people. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you are there when we go deeper on the technology that is quietly reshaping how the world works. Before you go, leave a comment. If you walked up to one of these robots without being told what it was, do you think you would figure it out? I want to know what you actually think, not what you want to think, what you actually think. See you in the next one.